Hey everyone, welcome back to Sit Fearlessly. Woo woo! Oh man, the energy is always good when we're here. Like we be missing
tired
it.
or whatever,
right?
whatever. The energy's there.
The cameras turn on and we're like, let's go, let's do it. But speaking of turning it on from the camera, we're definitely going to dive into that conversation today. But before, I do want to give a huge shout out to Alicia Keys for her 1-year anniversary for her Broadway show, Hell's Kitchen. I just went. It was incredible, amazing. I laughed, I cried. It was everything that I thought it would be. Yes, because I was dying to see it. So it was everything. Yeah, it was everything. All the emotions were evoked. And the actors, oh my God, they were incredible. Also, Tank was playing her father. So that was a surprise because I didn't know that. I guess they rotate Broadway actors sometimes in plays. So that was really dope and fun to see. So shout out to Alicia Keys.
Can't wait. I love Alicia Keys.
Yes. So that was really good. But without further ado, we have some 3 amazing gentlemen here in the building with us today. So shout out to all 3 of you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Joe, for supporting our platform, for coming back and sitting with us. We are very appreciative of you and very happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes. All right. So I know that you guys are debuting Bottom Bitch.
Yes.
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 So let's dive right into that and let's go. Tell us a little bit about it.
So Bottom Bitch is a story about a young girl who's growing up in 1968. She's 15 and is seen through the lens of a fictional character in a non-fictional world. So a lot of the characters that you see in the project are actual people: Shirley Chisholm, Bobby Kennedy, Frank Matthews, and a bunch of other people that actually lived during that time. And the events that take place in 1968, it starts with the assassination of Martin Luther King, and it ends with the celebration of Tommy Smith and forget Juan Carlos, I forget his name. It'll come to me, when they held up the Black Fist for the Olympics, which was in November. So it's a storyline that takes you from April 4th all the way to November 16th. And her life plays out within that time as a 16-year-old prostitute growing up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn.
Okay, wow, that's deep. That's a deep story. So what inspired you to create a film around that, around her story?
Growing up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, you see a lot. And there's a lot of stories that need to be told. But it's not a story that glorifies prostitution or pimping. It really talks about, it makes people, if you watch it, it will make you want to go deeper into sex trafficking, sex abuse, drug abuse, a lot of things that plague certain communities that we don't talk about, the taboo conversation about male-female relationship within the confines of the family and in the so-called protected community, and what happens and how does that affect everyone else.
Right, right. So what made you want to include like those historical moments in the film as well? Do you feel like it attributed to some of the stuff that was going on in our streets during that time?
Everything is connected.
Right.
Right, so you can't have one without the other. And the first thing people ask me is, well, what does Shirley Chisholm have to do with this story? And it's like, well, politics is governed by the streets, especially local politics, right? So if the gangsters are not behind you, then you really don't have a leg to stand on. So the gangsters protect you and actually lift you up. Well, at least when we were coming up, when I was growing up, the gangsters' job was to, aside from doing everything else, but to protect the community. Right. And in protecting the community, they also brought certain leaders to prominence. And they protected those people to make sure that their job was being done correctly. So I wanted to showcase a lot of that as well. So bringing those actual historical figures in, I wanted the story to feel real and not feel like something that was made up, but actually, you can actually put yourself in that situation.
Right. And I mean, not to go too deep into it, but some would say it's kind of contradicting to say that a gangster is also going to protect the community. Can you break that down just a little bit for us?
How does a gangster protect the community? Well, I mean, it's really self-explanatory. The gangster is the one who pretty much controls. That's the law and order of the community. You're never going to get rid of sex, prostitution, drugs, any of that stuff. It's all going to happen, but the gangster regulates it. And the police officers back then worked in tandem with the gangsters to make sure. So if somebody did something out of bounds, the gangster would go and say, "Hey, you got to turn yourself in. You can't." They made sure that there was law in a place where there was seamlessly lawlessness. So, and when it came to the elected officials, politics is a dirty game. And if you don't have the right people standing behind you, then you could really get lost in the sauce. And the gangsters made sure that the politicians were taken care of, the kids were taken care of. We played football together as kids, and the gangsters paid for our football uniforms. We didn't know it, but they made sure that when we played out, that the fields that's a no zone, right? So the kids are playing today. They have the uniforms ready. They have everything that they need. That's what the gangsters did when I came up.
Well, I mean, that's a great conversation to have, like, outside of here, because a lot of our youth right now think they're gangster a lot, but they don't understand what responsibility comes with it. And you're sharing what responsibility comes with it. So that's definitely a conversation, to dive into at another time. But thank you for sharing that and breaking that down. So let's go into like the production of the film. Let's go into film production and what it takes and what comes with it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
This was a 2-year. This was a 2-year project, right? So we were.
And you can introduce yourself also and say your name.
This is Kenny Williams, and I played King inside the film. Well, it's not a film. It's episodes. It's 6 episodes.
Okay.
And I think that's what's going to be different. So you go from one episode. So it's easy to digest. It's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Then you go into the next one. And when we looked up, it was like, we've been doing this thing for 2 years. We're coming out of COVID and everything like that. And so we were really doing these scenes like outside in Brooklyn. We were doing one particular scene, and it's a whole stroll.
Okay.
And these
they were actually working.
And but the thing is a time period piece. So we like in 60s, 70s, women, and they looking at me, I'm playing a pimp like this. Wait, like, do you see the outfit? It's not
right.
2025, right? But it looks so real when you look at it. He did a great job as far as it looks authentic as far as the cars and the wardrobe and everything like that. If he was to get an award, it would be for costume design and just the look of it, what have you.
Okay. Did you want to share anything on production?
Well, I mean,
and also introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Real, one of the producers on this project that I like to call alternative viewing. One of the things about even being a producer is finding what's necessary to make the project happen. And I think one of my biggest jobs is to make sure his mind is quiet to create. Where if he has to worry about getting a car or getting the food and it's so many little things that happen behind the scenes that people are fully unaware of that, like even Kenny being, working tirelessly on the project and then look up and there's chicken available or there's water available, an apple or something. And me and Joe go back like literally all my life. So we don't have to talk too much to see things that need to be done. And when I see him focused, I can see that, okay, it's time for this to happen. Okay, it's time for this to happen. And then once it's done, because, there's a I don't want to put it out there like we're doing a lot of things wrong, but there's a lot of things that just need to get done. So if we going on a street at 3 o'clock in the morning to get a set, sometimes I might have to put my truck in the intersection to make sure they can get the shot done.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or just having a conversation with the community. And because of like what he said as far as the people that are a part of the community, for it being where we come from, we know how to communicate. So, like he said, shooting on the block, that there was actual activity going on.
Wow.
And, you know, to the point that there's laws to this game. And you in somebody's area, you in somebody's territory,
Right.
and because it looks so authentic, there
You're
was an
about to come after
approach.
Kenny.
There was an approach. And it was like, yo, let me explain something to you. Like, I got it. And they was like, oh, okay, so now they want to govern it. Like, are you telling the right story? Like,
Right.
are you
Right.
making sure you
Right.
speaking the right language?
Right.
And then we wound up connecting with a few of them that just gave real feedback. You know what I mean? But that's the community we come from. So when
Yeah.
you speak of young gangsters, I think what happens is, I think you mentioned as far as gatekeepers and things like that, there's still a need for it because there's rules and regulations
Right.
even in lawlessness.
Right.
So
That's true.
we wanted to show the fact that, you
That's
know,
true.
the workings of the community, everybody has their place, from the figurehead all the way down to the foundation, which is the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. But I love that you also mentioned like the team collective effort, because it does take teamwork to put anything together, anything you're trying to do. So the fact that y'all understand each other, you have that synergy, and you know when things need to happen without somebody telling you, I think also makes for a great thing to happen, you know, organically and probably faster because you know what needs to get done. Yeah. So how did you find your actors and actresses? And shout out to Yasmina, our girl Yasmina. Okay?
That's the sis right
Yes.
there. That's me to keep people in check.
So I've been working on the projects for a while, different projects, and it's almost like collecting. You know, I was a kid. I played with action figures a lot. It's almost like collecting your little superhero action figures.
Okay.
You're saying, you know, I'm gonna put this Avengers team together, and I'm still collecting action figures as I go on. I'm always meeting people. So Kenny, I worked with a couple projects with Kenny before. I worked with a couple projects with Yasmina, and as soon as I heard her accent, I said, I got to use you for something. And I guess she thought I was playing, but I was like, no, I'm going to use you.
Yeah. She's
Coco, someone who I've watched grow in business. So I pretty much, I'm observant. I'm a student of the game. So I'm watching everything. And I'm looking at the potential pick of the litter and saying, okay, come work with me. You know what I mean? So when something's available, I say, come on, let's work. But it wasn't easy for them either.
Right.
Because, and Kenny can tell you, coming in from day one to day 600 and whatever, right? There was a training process for them. So they had to go through a whole learning how to be a 1968 person, not just a pimp or a prostitute, but how people walked, talked, how their mannerisms are different from 2025 to 1968.
Right.
So they had to learn all of that and not be caricatures of, oh man, it's jive time, not that, but be authentic. So when you watch it, you don't feel like it's a blaxploitation project, but you're watching a story unfold.
Right.
Well, wasn't that difficult for me? I was the oldest, one of the oldest.
I was just thinking that, like, wait, hold
You're
on.
like, it was reminiscent. Let me
That
find
was the
out,
most
Kenny.
incredible thing was that working with, like, they were so much younger. Like the my stable, that they couldn't
Stable
really.
is a group of
Entrepreneurial women of the ladies of the evening.
under the governing of this particular person.
Okay.
They were working for my corporation,
Okay.
and they couldn't really get it. But even though I was born in '69, is that I can see my uncle like I could witness it and see what have you. The only thing that was different and was incredible about the story, it took place in Brooklyn. So my mindset of like the pimp was always like, you know, it was like a West Coast or Detroit, like when you see the pimp balls, or New York City, like Times Square. So I was like, it was pimping in Brooklyn. So that was the whole thing of getting around that, and that's what made the story interesting. So yeah, it wasn't that I didn't have to pull too far.
Right.
You know, as far as like to, but it was interesting that because we certain terminology. What was it? Asti? What was the drink? They couldn't.
Asti Spumante.
Oh, give us one. What's that?
Martini and Rossi, Asti, Martini and Rossi, Asti
Asti
like a
Spumante.
What is that?
It was a one.
Martini.
That's a wine.
It was a wine.
It was
Martini and Asti Poo.
Martini and Rossi.
And
Asti
Rossi.
Spumante.
It was true. Yeah, it was that was a big popular drink
Right.
back
Wow.
Yes, but we
I'ma
remember.
order that in Harlem.
We remember it. I was like, this. I said, they don't know.
It's kind of like what Hypnotic would have been.
Right.
You know, something to that
Dangerous,
effect.
basically.
You know what I mean? Day drinks, light drinks. But
Yeah.
it's I wanted to make sure to mention, like, piggybacking off what Kenny said, to be one of the more seasoned veterans on the set and working with a much younger cast, the writing and directing and tutelage of Joe, being able to have them embody it, not only because they were young, but it was something that they probably never even seen before in their lives. So to be able to take it in, like, and to be very clear, Yasmina actually changed his trajectory on that particular actress, because she was supposed to be a different nationality. But when he heard her voice and how authentic it was, and how, like, she was so on point from day one when we did the table read, well, we were actually doing the auditions, and the authenticity of her innocence, yet her savoir-faire, it was very visible. You know what I mean? And we discussed it, and he was like, nah, we can go this way with it. And she actually was the reason that character became that character.
And I wanted to add something.
I love that, yes.
When you said, like, we all came together, and I have to, like, salute Yasmina, like, playing this character, you got to really dig into something ugly.
That was going to be my next
right?
question.
And so it was a lot of things I had to do.
Yeah.
And it's mainly with her. And, like, when, like, he'll go cut, and she said, you know, she would come and go, "You're all right." And it reminded me of the movie Accused with Jodie Foster, and the guys had to gang rape her, right? And I remember how, like, a lot of these guys, like, it took a toll on them to do, you know, play that role. And she was very supportive of, like, helping me through that. You know, because I think we look at the pimp and thinking it's something sexy and glorified. Like when you hear these cats in the hip hop and, like, I'm a pimp,
Right.
and you don't really realize what that entails.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's also a lot of abuse that goes behind that.
Yeah.
You know,
I wanted to
so-
make sure that there was no heroes in this project. So no one is to be looked at and say, "Oh, that's my hero." Right? There might be heroic moments, which in every situation is, but I don't. I
Right.
want to make sure that it's not a project of glorification of that type of lifestyle, but an informative story of that type of lifestyle. And each female in this particular story has their own way of how they got to him.
Right.
And when you see
Different
that,
perspectives.
and that's very touching as well, because you realize, well, what nobody ever asked. You see a prostitute,
Right.
what got you here?
Yeah.
Right? You just say she's a prostitute, she's a
Right.
throwaway. No, she's a human being
Right.
with a particular set of circumstances
Right.
that led her down this road.
Kind of story.
And
yeah.
if we don't take the time to have that conversation, like, wow, this girl is doing this. You see her, she's such a boss, but did you know her father was selling her
Right.
before we got to this point? You know what I mean? We don't see the tears behind what got her on that street corner, and that's what this story really dives into.
Right.
What's crazy about that is I actually have a personal story where around 11, 12 years old, pimping was, well, not pimping, but the prostitution ring in Brooklyn was around Rutland Plaza, the park. And on one side, there was prostitutes, and on the other side, it was the alphabet community before it was the alphabet community. And as kids, we used to ride our bikes all over Brooklyn, and I never forget, I actually had a conversation with a prostitute at like 12 years old, and was just like hurt, like, why are you out here? Like, why are you out here? And without even blinking, she looked at me and said, "You got a mother, right?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, if your mother had to do anything to provide for you, she would too." And it changed my life to understand, like, even in relationships, a lot of people think you can meet a person and go forward, when in reality, you got to meet a person and go backward to understand where they came from. So you got to know where a person come from to know why they are the way they are,
That's
so
a
that you
fact.
collectively can go forward. And I think he touched on that. Joe touched on that a lot as far as, we got a lot of, I'm reluctant to the term independent film anymore because it just got out of hand.
Right.
But in what I call self-financed projects and things of that nature, I don't think there's a serious enough approach to the backstories. And I think there was an excellent job in that to where he said it's not glorified as much as it's more informative and then entertaining.
Right. Right. Yeah, because it's a lot to have to make that decision and immerse yourself in the streets like that. And I guess that's kind of where the pimp comes in when you talk about bringing order to something, because possibly a lot of these women went out into the streets and didn't really know what they were getting themselves into, and probably were being killed at some point.
Oh, definitely.
If they, weren't getting paid and were fighting for their payment and, stuff like that. So it's just interesting to see how it all evolves. But I'm also glad that you're shining a light on this, because it also shows, to your point, that there's life after what has happened in our past life. And it doesn't need to define like who we are in totality as a human.
Right.
So, the fact that you're bringing light to that is yeah.
And we talk about the women being throwaways is killed. They're serial killers in this story as well.
Wow.
So where the girls are just, again, looked at as throwaways. And we talk about that. So every aspect of that lifestyle that you can think about is in here. And I'm very proud of it as a story, because even what you said, it doesn't put the blame on any particular person.
Right.
Because you may see one pimp that is in control, but then there's another pimp that's being controlled by his prostitute.
Right.
Right? So he doesn't want to be a pimp, but he's manipulated into being a pimp by a prostitute. So it's, when you look at that world, it's so complex, and it's not easy to just say, oh, that's the problem.
Right.
Because to them, they're all the solution. They're not the problem. The pimp is the solution to the hoe. The hoe is the solution to the pimp. The John is the solution to all, and their solutions to the John. So when that ecosystem lives within itself, and it's just a really weird dynamic, but not one to look down on, but to try to understand.
Right, right. Do you talk anything about children being involved in any of this that's going on, like a child of a prostitute?
Well,
We get into that in season 2.
Okay.
Oh, it's
Okay. I'm getting ahead.
but this is the most, what people are going to look at, that Foxy is a child. And that's the dynamics with King and hers, and he refers to this is a baby. How, that whole dynamic, because this is, I'm a much older, I've been around, and then I feel threatened in my world by these young, people. So Foxy is a teenager.
Right.
This is not a 20-year-old, 30-year-old. She's 16.
But she's also a threat.
Yeah. That makes it even worse.
She's also a threat.
Yeah, that's what makes it even worse. Going like this. Wait, hold up.
Right.
For him,
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for breaking this down like this. No, seriously.
The whole movie, everything, the whole
Yeah.
series, everything sounds fun in the making. Everything just sounds so fun.
And just a story, just hearing those stories, it's important to hear that. I watch a lot of documentaries. I'm a documentary junkie, because I like to understand what happened before the person reached this point. So thank you for breaking it down. And we don't have much time left, but I did want to ask you, you mentioned resources, right? How do you get resources for independent films?
Professional begging.
You pretty much have to, you got to be out there. There's no way that one person can tell you this is what has to happen. Bottom Bitch, the resources to shoot that is totally different from the resources that it took for me to shoot To Live and Die in Bed-Stuy, or we're working on a project now, Fool's Dough, which is a comedy, which is a different set of resources. You basically have to be a person that's a people person. And as I said, collect all these little things and put them in your pocket. And when you need it, say, hey, man, you know what? I really need this, and I really need that. And you got to be a good person that people want to help.
Right.
Right? So they want to help you grow. So they'll give you their time, their energy, their whatever they have when you don't have much to give in return.
Right, right. Because I think that's where a lot of people in different industries struggle with. It's like how to get those people, number one, that support you and will be a part of the project, even if there's no resources to start off with. You know what I'm saying?
I think one of the problems, I wouldn't call it a problem, but one of the shifts, especially for us, is where I don't want to group everything in one box, but right now, social media plays such a huge part where we come from shaking hands and kissing babies and what Joe would call maintaining relationships. So as you travel, I mean, we've been in this game over 20 years right now, and the relationships that we've acquired over the years allow us to go back and not necessarily ask for favors, but pooling resources.
Right.
Because I know I heard you guys talk about the networking and things of that nature. And even when we did the first project, After Honor Among Thieves, when we did the first series, The Star, there was a storyline about it where, okay, you take your people, I'm gonna take my people, we're gonna put it together. And then unfortunately, the first thing we wanna know is, well, who's gonna be in charge? Opposed to, let's get it done.
Right.
You know what I mean? And one thing that I know with him and I is like, we started with a bunch and, you know, people fall off on the way up. But the one thing we kept solid is that, let's get it done.
Yeah.
Once we get it done, then we can figure out everything else.
Right.
But that also comes with trust.
Yeah.
That also comes with love and a relationship, you know what I mean? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Well, we are dwindling down on our time. This was really great, fellas. Thank you.
And I love the support you guys have for Joe and the
Yeah.
teamwork, and I love it.
And thank you for bringing some male energy on
Yes.
set.
Yes.
Appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? Some grown male energy. Yeah.
That's why I was like, I too.
Yeah, but we not gorilla pimping. This is smooth, right?
Not at all. No, it's great to see men of color in their professional environment talking about all of the professional, amazing things that they're working on. So it is, really great for us to highlight that. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Let everybody know where they can watch the film, if you know your debut date, where they can follow you, all of that good stuff.
The film will be coming out on Tubi. You can watch it. I'm not sure about the exact debut, but I'd probably say within the next 30 days. And you can follow me at Joe Zeyes on Instagram. But I do want to say one thing about
Real quick,
everything.
yes,
Real
because
quick.
we got to wrap up.
I want this film to drum up conversation amongst you all.
Okay.
Right.
Women, not amongst men, amongst women. I want you all to talk to younger women about this film. I want you all to talk to older women about this film so you can get a better understanding of what it's like to
Right.
be
Right.
feminine and female in this predatory world.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate
Okay.
that?
Well, thank you, Joe. And I don't want to cut that off, but that's very important because that's definitely what I took away from this is understanding what's happening and then being able to communicate that. But thank you so much for being on Sit Fearlessly. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having
This is
me.
Sit Fearlessly, everyone. Thank you so much. And I can't wait for y'all to watch this episode.
Me neither.
Yes.